please use the chat facility. Grant and I will be monitoring that as we go. We'll save up the questions for the end of the session. And again, there's no time limit on this, so keep those questions coming. We do like them, and we've now got the board up and running for the Stargazing on the main forum. So if you've got any questions or suggestions for future topics, or even want to do a talk yourself, that's the place to go and post up. And we'd love to see you. So, without any further ado then, let us move on to tonight's speaker. I have been lucky enough to know Dave for the last decade during our membership of Bedford Astronomical Society and trips up to Norfolk for the autumn equinox star party. We've had some great times up there, but that's a subject for a whole other talk, I think, and we'll save that one. I really don't know anybody who's more enthusiastic about astronomy and bringing it to the public than Dave. And now that he's semi-retired, he's got even more time to run more workshops, visit more schools, take more images, and generally get deeper into his astronomy. He self-published several tutorials, including lunar imaging, deep sky stacker, and for those of you that were on the session last week, Affinity Photo is his new one. And I tell you that is definitely going in the shopping basket. In fact, it's already in the shopping basket, and there's an envelope in Dave's hands with my name on it. So, of course, Affinity has still got the 90-day trial and the 50% discount on it at the moment. Oh, and I must tell you, Dave has also got a virtual workshop running on Affinity Photo on the 27th of June. We'll post up the link on the site later, but you can get to it from Dave's website, stargazing.co.uk. But we'll post that link up. So if you're available on the 27th, suggest you get into that. So tonight, Dave is going to take us through some observing challenges, I do believe. So it gives me great, enormous pleasure to introduce you to Dave Eagle. So Dave, over to you.
Okay. Thank you very much, Dad. And I'm going to talk about summer observing challenges. And some of you who follow me on social media will know that I've just done one of my personal challenges, which I've been meaning to do for a long time. Because Venus was approaching inferior conjunction. So I've been out there, because we've got used to seeing Venus in the evening sky over the past, how many weeks now? It's been a long time it's been there. Like a familiar friend over in the west once it gets dark. So I've been following it over the last number of weeks, and I've been taking my images sort of like about 3 o'clock in the afternoon, so not waiting for it to get dark, so I could follow it as close to the sun as I could get. So I thought I'd start the talk with my challenge of capturing Venus. So the challenge was to get it to show the change in phase, and of course, as it's approaching Earth as well, the change in size of the planet too. So you can see, and this is one of the good things that came out of lockdown, because, you know, I was here, so I could actually go out, set the telescope up and take some pictures. So as we got closer and closer, it was, how brave am I going to be going that close to the sun? So that's how close I got, and I thought that was going to be the end of it. But some people actually got the ring, because when you get within about 3 degrees of the sun, you get the light coming around the atmosphere of Venus, so you get this complete ring, and I'd love to have got that. And that was 2.4 degrees. That's Thierry Legourt, the French guy, who's absolutely fantastic. So that was my plan, to try and capture that. But, you know, I haven't got the setup he's got. I certainly haven't got the equipment. And the other thing to say is, don't try this at home, okay? Because, you know, we're really close to the sun here, because at inferior conjunction, Venus was only about 1/4 of a degree away from the limb of the sun at the time. So it was very, very close. Cool. And so 2 days before inferior conjunction, I thought I'll give it a go. So let's see if this works. Oh, I think I better actually stop this share and share my screen rather than the PowerPoint. And hopefully you'll see a video. Yeah, can you see the video?
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, okay. So here was Venus, and you can see it there. I'm using a 120 Evo star refractor. Just as a few days before inferior conjunction. And amazingly, would you believe, out of that video, I managed to get that picture. So it's 2 days before inferior conjunction. I thought that was going to be it. I thought that was going to be it. And so the day before, on the 2nd, I thought I'd give it a go. But what a nightmare that was. Here we go, very close to the sun. And all I got were these lots of sparkly bits. And you can see the glow of the sun. And the camera's actually on the lowest setting, the lowest exposure, and the lowest gain setting. It was just too bright. I couldn't pick Venus out. Somebody said this was the dandruff of 60 million people who couldn't go to the barbers. You know, it's all the pollen and things. So if you were suffering for hay fever at the beginning of the week, that's why. So that was it. I thought, I'm not going to get it. Of course, the 3rd was inferior conjunction. So on the Friday, I thought I'd have another go. And surprisingly, there it is, out the other side. So managed to capture that video of Venus showing a very, very thin crescent. And then when I actually processed that, it was very difficult to process. But you can see these cusps of the planet. You can just about see they're really well extended around. Very, very grainy, not up to the standard of somebody like Pete Lawrence, but you know, I was really pleased with that. So that was my personal challenge. And of course, now Venus is starting to appear in the morning sky. Okay, so it's summer. So challenges, here we go. So the sun, white light viewing. There is a new sunspot just come in, and of course that's the challenge. How many sunspots are we going to get? Because it's just past minimum. So very few sunspots, but this one, 2765, has come on. I haven't had a clear sky yet since it's come round to actually give that a go. So I'm going to try that in white light. And of course, don't forget, if you're using white light, look out for the bright faculae associated with sunspots as well. I'm lucky enough to have a hydrogen alpha setup. So here's a couple of images I took fairly recently. So there's a very nice prominence that was showing up a couple of weeks ago. And here's a filler prom. So this is where you got a prominence, which actually you can see against the chromosphere here as well. So it becomes a part filament and part prominence, which you call the filler prom. And then, of course, Noctilucent Clouds. It's that time of year, folks, to get out and see some Noctilucent Clouds. And there have been some the last few nights. I've not been up that late to see them. This is a very, very bad image I took a couple of years ago when we had a nice display. And there have been, I think, Saturday night, was it? Anybody see any of those? But there were some Saturday night. So they have been about. So have a look out for those. And if you're looking for them, get out and have a look about an hour, hour and a half after sunset, and you'll see them over towards the northwest because it's sunlight that's actually catching on these clouds. And then as the night progresses, what will happen, they will move across. So around midnight, 1 o'clock, depending on whether you're using universal time or British summertime, the clouds will be towards the north, and then towards sunrise, it'll be over in the northeast. So, you know, that's where you want to look for Noctilucent Clouds if you're going to look for them. There was a supernova in Messier 61, and that was visible in the galaxy a few weeks ago. It's still visible. There it is. So I've actually marked it in my image I took a few weeks ago. It was 14th magnitude, so it's well within people's limits visually, if you've got a decent aperture. But it's now dropped to around about 15th magnitude. So that's another good challenge you might want on there. But if you're an imager, of course, that should be fairly easy for you to capture. Comets. These are always a challenge. Of course, we had Comet Atlas 2019 Y4, and that was going to give us great things, but it's dead, Jim. You know, it went, and there are still people taking images of it, but it's a ghost of its former self. I managed to capture it a few weeks ago. This was a real challenge, fighting the twilight, and before it went behind the neighbour's house. But you see where it actually broke apart. You can see a main fragment here and another fragment there, and I've tried to enhance this a little bit so you can see. You see a little tail coming off here, and this big cloud around it where it's broken apart, and still people are imaging that. So there's a challenge for you if you want to a nice ghostly comet. And then of course we had Comet Swan, which is going to replace that, and that was going to be wonderful too. Of course that's dying. It could give an absolutely wonderful display in the southern hemisphere, but as it got towards the north, yeah, it just decided, you're not going to see me, bye. So yeah, so that's another disappointment for us northern hemisphere comet observers. We've got 2019 Y1 Atlas. That's actually in Ursa Major. We'll talk about these a little bit more in a minute. I'll show you where they are. And then 2017 T2 Pan-STARRS. That one's quite nice at the moment. Again, that's in Ursa Major as well. So fairly easy to find. And that's actually an outburst. So it's actually brighter than they expected it to be as well. And then we've got 2020 F3 Neowise. And that's actually in Orion. So we're not going to see that for a little while, but it could give us a nice display a bit later in the year. And then we've got 2019 U6 Lemon, which again is in the southern hemisphere at the moment in Puppis, just to the left of Canis Major, but it is heading north, and I'll show you some maps of those so you can see where they are. Let me just move this out of the way so I can see properly. So this is one in Ursa Major. So it's actually coming down in the southern part of Ursa Major and coming in to Coma Berenices and Virgo here. So you can see it's going to progress quite nicely into all these galaxies. So there could be, there's a Messier galaxy there, Messier galaxy there. So it could be possibility, if you're doing photographs, to actually capture it near some of these Messier galaxies. So that could be quite good. It's about 9.7 magnitude at the moment, but it should get a bit brighter. This is 2019 Y1 Atlas. And then 2017 T2 Pan-STARRS. It's right in the bowl of the plough. This is the plough, just the left-hand side of the bowl of the plough here. And it's going to go past, is that M108 over here? And this is the left-hand star of the plough. And it's going to sweep down and into Coma Berenices as well, amongst all these fainter galaxies around here. And then 2020 F3 Neowise, again, that's down near Orion, and it's going to sweep up, and it should hopefully come below the plough. Here's the plough here, Ursa Major. So the southern part of Ursa Major, towards the end of July, and then August it's in Coma Berenices. So we still might be able to see it quite nicely, again, amongst all those galaxies around the constellation there. And then 2019 U6 Lemon, it's in the southern hemisphere, of course, but it is heading north. It's going to come past below Leo. Here's the sickle of Leo here and the body. And then, of course, it's going to come past all these Messier galaxies in the Virgo cluster as well. And then past Arcturus by the middle of August. So, yeah, so it's a bit to look forward to. We should still be able to see that by then. Okay, one of the other things I'd like you to look out for, which is a good challenge in itself, is Barnard's star. It lies in the constellation of Ophiuchus, and of course that constellation has got lots of nice globular clusters in there. So have a look at those, but see if you can hunt down Barnard's star. It's not really an interesting star in itself. It's a red star, and it's magnitude 9.5, so it's well within reach of most people. But it's got a fast, proper motion. So you can actually record motion over time. And that's 10.29 arc seconds per year. So it moves about 1 degree in about 351 years. So this is a long-term project if you're going to have a go at that. And a while ago, they were talking about possible planets around it, but a lot of that conversation has now sort of dwindled into the background. They did think there were 5 planets going around it, but I think they now think that maybe it wasn't. So, yeah, so here's a picture I took a while ago, and it's actually down here. So this little triangle of stars really shows nicely where it is. So it used to be a bit further down here, but it's now moved up to here. There is another bigger triangle of stars up here, so don't get confused with that one, which is much larger scale. So that's a picture I took a while ago, and I've annotated this one. So in my celestial handbook, the position for 1960 is marked right in line with that little arrow of stars. And then in my little observing log in 1996, I recorded the star there. And you can see in my picture taken in 2012, you can see how much the star's moved since I last recorded it. So even in my lifetime, I've seen the star moving. I've also done it with 61 Cygni as well, and you can see that moving as well. And then the other week, somebody asked me about this, and he sent me his photograph taken a little after mine. I think it was taken last year. Oops, here we go. And you can see here's the little triangle of stars, and here's Barnard's star, and you can see it moving over the time that those 2 images were taken. So see if you can hunt it down and see if you can watch it move over time. But that's a long-term challenge for you. Okay, if you're unlike me and willing to get up in the early hours of the morning, of course, we've got 3 planets on display. We've got Jupiter, which is obviously the brightest one. And I did actually see it this morning because I was up at a ridiculous time this morning. And it's absolutely shining like a beacon now. And then next to it is Saturn. And then Mars a little bit further down. We'll talk a little bit more about Mars a bit later. But that's a good challenge. And on the 9th, the moon's going to be a lot closer to both Saturn and Jupiter. And then on the 13th, the moon's going to be close to Mars in the morning sky as well. And on the 14th of June, Mars and Neptune are going to be in conjunction with one another. So the moon's not going to be far away. So there's Mars. But where's Neptune? Of course, it's a lot fainter. There's Mars, and Neptune's that one there. It's magnitude plus 7.89, so you do need binoculars or a small telescope to be able to see that and identify it. But it's quite a long way from Mars, so you're not going to get them in the same field of view unless you've got a really wide angle lens or telescope to do that. Then on the 19th of June, this is a good challenge for you. We're going to have the moon actually occulting Venus. It's going to be in the daytime, in the morning. But what are we going to see? Well, this was a couple of images I took a few weeks ago of the moon and Venus, and I put them together to show you roughly the scale of the 2 planets, as you can see them. So on the 19th, this is the view pre-occultation, which is about 8:36 in the morning. So here's the moon, lovely crescent, and here's Venus. Also sporting a lovely crescent as well. It's moved well away from the sun by then, so easily see it in the morning sky. And of course, the ingress, the bit where it actually goes into the moon, is going to be really easy to spot because Venus is going to be really bright, and you should be able to see the crescent moon as well. So you can actually see where Venus is going to disappear. And of course, Venus is also going to be much brighter than the moon as well. So you'll see that quite distinctly when you see it through the telescope. It's going to be cloudy, we know, but we're going to give it a go. I tried to get an ISS transit across the moon about a week ago, and I set 3 telescopes up, all running, and about 30 seconds before the transit, the clouds came across. But yeah, that's astronomy, isn't it? So just before ingress starts, well, actually it started, you can see, but we're not going to observe that because we can't see the dark part of Venus. And that's about 8:40 in the morning. You'll see the crescent. You won't see any of the dark side, but you should see it approaching the limb of the moon. And then 8:41, it's nearly gone. So that's going to be a wonderful view, I think, of it disappearing behind the moon. Okay, the occultation lasts for just over an hour. And this is the real challenge for you. The egress, the bit where it actually emerges from behind the moon, is about 9:44. But where is it going to emerge from? That's the challenge. Can you point your telescope to actually where it's going to, because you won't be able to see the dark side of the moon. It will be hidden in the daylight. So you've got to try and work out where Venus is going to appear from in just a blank sky. And it roughly does a line across here. So here's where it disappears, and here's where it emerges from. So there's your challenge, to see if you can get a picture of it just as it emerges, or a video of it reappearing out the other side. So that starts at 9:44, and you should just see this little cusp just appear. So if you're alert enough and you've not got your telescope in the right place, you might be able to move it down to see that emerging. And then at 9:46, you can see it's just cleared the limb of the moon. So it's a real challenge to actually see that emerge from the dark side. 20th of June, we've got the summer solstice, and everybody's seen these pictures of the Annular, where you take a picture throughout the year from the same location with the camera pointing with the same settings, and you record the position of the sun every day. So how about taking on the challenge of recording the Annular? I've started this year. It's taken me a while, and so far here's my attempt. So you can see I started in December, and you can see this is when we had all the rain in February and March. And then I got a couple of clear days where I could get out, and it's nearly summer. So I've got 2 or 3 to get before it starts looping round and comes back again. So there's a challenge. Get out and take some pictures of the sun with the same setup and see if you can record it moving as the Earth's tilting and moving in its orbit. So all good fun. 21st of June, there's an annular solar eclipse, but that's a real challenge for us because 1, we're not going to see it from here, and 2, we can't travel. So hey, there you go. So, but here's what an annular eclipse looks like. I've never seen an annular eclipse. I've been lucky enough to see a total eclipse a couple of years ago, 3 years ago now. Good grief. Yeah. So yeah, so it's where the moon's a little bit further out, so it doesn't actually cover the sun. So by July, 9th of July, Venus has moved well away from the sun. It's appearing still low down in the morning sky, eastern sky, and it's right amongst the Hyades star cluster. So there's Venus, of course, Aldebaran, the bright red star, the red eye of Taurus, and the Hyades, lovely V-shaped cluster, and of course the Pleiades as well. But of course, it's not going to be anywhere near as fantastic as the view we had some weeks ago when Venus passed the Pleiades, and we got 3 clear nights, one after the other, which was fantastic. So on the 2nd of April, Venus was there, 3rd of April, and the 4th of April going past the Pleiades. So that was my composite shot. And it's really strange because the twilight gave Venus slightly different colours on each of those days, which was quite strange. But there you go. 14th of July, Jupiter's at opposition. It's not going to be a challenge to find Jupiter because, yeah, it's going to be fairly low down in Sagittarius. And of course, Saturn's not that far away from it either. We'll talk about those 2 a little later. So it's low down in Sagittarius, and here's a telescopic view you might see at opposition. So we've got Jupiter, and then we've got Io, Europa, and Callisto, but no sign of Ganymede at this time of night. This is at 1 o'clock in the morning on the 14th. But you have to wait an hour later because Ganymede is actually just coming round from behind Jupiter's disk. So it'd be quite nice to watch that appear from behind. Of course, Jupiter at this time will be at its biggest and best. So if you're going to go out and watch it or take some webcam images of it, then that's the time to get out and take those images. And then 15th of July, Pluto's actually at opposition as well. It's not actually that far away from Jupiter, but it's magnitude 14, so that's going to be a real challenge. It's amongst the stars of Sagittarius, which makes it even more of a challenge because there's so many stars there. And if we enhance the stars and get rid of the atmosphere, you can see just how many stars there are around Jupiter. So we're trying to look at for Pluto in amongst all those stars. And that's one of the challenges of the New Horizons team, because that's the direction in which New Horizons is heading. They're trying to find some faint objects or Kuiper belt objects for it to explore on its next mission. And of course, there's so many stars there, they have to look for stars that move. So they're using the cameras on New Horizons to actually select the next target. But if we look a little bit closer, there it is. It's there. It's really, really faint. But it's actually, you can see it does a retrograde loop, just like all the outer planets do. And so when it's at opposition, that's where it is in the path. And here's Jupiter, not that far away. But of course, Jupiter moving much quicker than Pluto does. It actually overtakes Pluto 3 times this year. The first one was in March, which we couldn't see because it wasn't above the horizon. It passed it on the, well, it passes it on the beginning of July, and then it passes it again in November when we're not going to be able to see them again. So yeah, so Jupiter's going to actually pass Pluto. So that could be a challenge to get Jupiter, its moons, and Pluto in a wide field of view. Okay, so retrograde, it's because Jupiter's retrograde motion very similar to Pluto, although it's much more pronounced than Pluto's is because it's much further out. And here's an image of Pluto. Yeah, you're wowed by that, aren't you, folks? Yeah, I can tell. I took this around the time that New Horizons was exploring Pluto. And of course, I had to take an image on 2 separate nights. I nearly never went out the first night, the second night to take the other image. But I'm glad I did because it was then cloudy for 3 nights. So the next time Pluto was visible, it was clear. Pluto would have actually been off the frame that I took before. But of course, you have to compare those 2 images. Is it going to work? No. That's typical. It's not going to work. Oh, yes, it does. There you go. So you can see it's flicking backwards and forwards between the 2 spots here. So 2 images taken with a DMK 41 camera and an 8-inch telescope. So you can see you can catch Pluto with fairly modest equipment. And the movement reveals the very remote Kuiper belt objects. But of course, we see Pluto in a whole new light these days. And these wonderful images of Pluto showing this absolutely wonderful heart-shaped Tombaugh Regio, named after its discoverer, and of course Charon as well. And then of course the look back with the sun behind Pluto showing this absolutely wonderful atmosphere, which there's still a lot of debate about how that's caused. So that's fantastic. Okay, the next one is Mercury. Of course, Mercury very low down in the morning sky. That's by the 19th of July. You can see Venus and Hyades and the Pleiades again. And if you look down here on the 19th, the morning of the 19th, there's a very, very thin crescent moon visible. So that's quite a challenge in itself. But just below it, even lower down, is Mercury. I've exaggerated the moon here to show it up. But there's Mercury. It's not really going to get any further away from the horizon than you can see there. So that's going to be a real challenge. So give that a go on the 19th or around that date, because you should have a few days either side of there to catch it. And then, of course, 20th of July, Saturn reaches opposition. Of course, we've got Jupiter and we've got Saturn visible in the south around that time. And of course, there is a lovely effect where a few days before opposition, Saturn's rings really get bright. They get much brighter than they are either side of opposition. And this is called the Sea Liger effect. And you can see that really clearly. So if you have a look through a telescope, you see the rings. This is an image I took on the 7th of April. Not a very good night, good morning, but one of the few mornings that I actually get up to take images of the planets. This is one I took a couple of years ago, close to opposition. You can see just how bright those rings are. But if you look carefully, you can see that the rings are starting to close now. So in 2018, they were almost at their widest, and now you can see the disk of Saturn is actually poking above the rings. So they're now starting to close up. So we're going to lose those rings over a number of years. Okay, so Jupiter's going to gradually approach Saturn over the next few months. And we'll talk about that in a little while. And then Mercury reaches greatest western elongation on the 22nd. Again, it's still going to be very low in the northeastern sky because the angle of the ecliptic is quite low. So it's quite shallow, so it's not going to get really high. Venus and Mercury down here, of course. Moon's long gone by then. So you won't have that as a guide to help you find it. So there's another challenge for you. And of course, the Perseid meteor shower, not too much of a challenge. I think the challenge is to catch them on photograph. That's the real challenge, because the amount of times you set up your telescope, your camera, wide field of view, and try and take a picture of a meteor, they always go across when your camera's not taking the picture. But yeah, so that's the challenge, to catch them on your camera. And that's July the 24th of August. There's 85 per hour, roughly, but they are active between, maximum on the 12th and 13th of August, but they are active, it's because it's hiding behind my screen there, active between the 17th of July and the 24th of August. So although maximum is on the 12th and 13th, they are active for weeks either side. So get out there and have a look. The 14th of September is a nice conjunction of the Moon, Venus and Perseid M44 cluster in the eastern pre-dawn sky. So I've exaggerated the size of the Moon there, and you can see Jupiter down here. Venus down here. You can see the Moon, and you can see the Perseid star cluster. That could be a really nice composite, a really nice composition image to take with the cluster. Lovely Earth shine on the Moon, and Venus really nicely down there as well. And then looking ahead, I mentioned Mars. Of course, that's a challenge in itself at the moment. And you can see this is the path it's going to take. It's in Pisces, and it's going to come up, it's going to stop, and it's going to do a retrograde motion. And it's going to be at opposition around here. And then once it passes opposition, it's going to swing around again and go across this ribbon in Pisces, and then past this little group of galaxies here as well. A little group of galaxies near when it's at opposition as well. But whether you'll see those on an image, I don't know. But it'd be good fun to try. So there it is on the 13th of October. It's going to be fairly high up. And of course, 2 years ago, we had the opposition of Mars, but it was really low down in the sky. This time it's a bit higher up for us, but it's not as big as it was a couple of years ago. Magnitude -2.6 is going to look really red and really bright in the sky, so it's going to look fantastic. And it's in Pisces, as I mentioned, and this is what it looked like 2 years ago when it was at opposition. In fact, it didn't look like that because there was a huge dust storm that went across the surface. So even those in the southern hemisphere didn't get really good images of the surface because most of them were obscured because it was a perihelic opposition. And this is how big it's going to look at opposition this year. So it's not really that much smaller. It is smaller, a bit further away, but it's not really that small. So we should still get some good opportunities to see and perhaps image some of the surface features, as long as you don't get a dust storm, of course, but that's less likely, hopefully, this year. Here's an image I took on the 7th of April. It is really small, and that was really low down, and I was fighting the twilight when I took that. So you can see how it's changed throughout the year. So we got January, February, March, April. So that's around the time that I took the image. And you can see I've captured the phase there, but not really anything else. So I certainly want to improve on that as we go forward. And hopefully, as it gets nearer to Earth, I should have much more of an opportunity to be able to do that. So May and June, you can see just how much bigger it's now got. So I really ought to get myself up in the early hours to try and take some more images, because it's nearly double the size it was when I took that image. So it should be a lot easier. And it's getting a little bit higher in the sky as well. By July, it's getting even bigger. August, you can just see how that distance between Earth and Mars, as it decreases, it's getting much, much bigger. Just like Venus's disk got bigger as she approached inferior conjunction. So by the time we get to October, look how big it is compared to what it was when I took my image. So hopefully we'll get some really good shots and be able to see some great detail there. And then you can see just how it shrinks as we go into the rest of the year, October, November and December, and it quickly shrinks away as the distance between the Earth and Mars decreases. It increases, sorry, and the disk decreases. And just a tip for when we're observing Mars later in the year, don't go out there at the same time on successive nights, because the rotation period of Mars is very, very similar to the Earth's. So if you go out the next night, you're going to see more or less the same view that you got the night before. So if you do get a good long run of an evening, a nice clear sky, just observe it most of that night to see, make the most of Mars rotating to bring different features into view. It will change slowly over the weeks, but of course you've got to take into account that it's going to start shrinking again as soon as you leave too much time between opposition and observing the planet as well. Looking ahead, I mentioned that Jupiter was approaching Saturn. Now by the 21st of December, and this is really looking ahead, if you look down towards the southwest after sunset, you should see a really bright star. Of course, it is Jupiter, but right next to it is Saturn. You can hardly separate them in this view. They're going to be really, really close together. So if we magnify that image, and you can see, here's Saturn, the rings and some of its moons, and here's Jupiter. And so that's how close they are. So if you've got a really nice wide field of view, you should be able to get those in together. So that would be an absolutely spectacular sight if you catch them before so they get too low. Okay, so some of the moons, you'll have Io, Ganymede, Europa, and Callisto. This is a bright star in the field, but they're going to be quite a challenge in the twilight, fairly low down. And then, of course, you've got Titan, and there are some fainter moons, but I think they're going to be too much of a challenge to get those in the twilight. So have a go, see what you can do. So there you go. So they're my challenges for the rest of the summer, and looking ahead into later in the year. So still lots to enjoy despite the fact it's summer. And if I could get myself up early to do some of the planets, then perhaps I'll have a little bit more of that as well. So I hope people will take on some of those challenges that I've thrown down for you, and just enjoy the sky. Okay, if you want to know more about what's happening in the sky, I do have a sky diary on Team Up. So you can access that on my website by using the link shown below. And you can actually download the app and put the diary on the app as well. So you can carry it around with you rather than just refer to it online all the time from the web page. Some of you friends on Facebook. I'm also on Twitter as well. And all my images that I take are on Flickr. In fact, from the weekend, I've not had time to upload some of my new images. So I'll try and do that in the next day or two. I can also run the Virtual Astronomy Club, which at the moment meet every Tuesday and Thursday evening. So if you want some more virtual astronomy meetups, then join us on there. Everybody's welcome. And then a cheeky plug for some of my astrophotography guys. I know Daz mentioned at the beginning, so there's one on Deep Sky Stacker. one on Photoshop image processing, another one on imaging the moon using DSLR and webcams, and then of course Affinity Photo, which is getting rave reviews. And yeah, it's an absolutely fantastic piece of software for the cost it is at the moment. They're half price, so why not? And then talking of Infinity Photo, I do run astronomy and astrophotography workshops. I've started to have to do this virtually at the moment. I had one a couple of weeks ago, which went really well. So I've got another one on Affinity Photo showing you how Affinity Photo works, how it can be used for astrophotography, and some of the quirks it has. And that's going to be on the 27th of June, 10 o'clock till midday. So if anybody wants to come along on that, let me know, and I'm sure I can give you a discount. Okay, so that's my summer observing challenges. So hope you take some of those up and enjoy the summer sky, and hopefully it'll get dry and warm, and we'll get to see it again. Okay, thank you.
Cheers, Dave. Thanks very much indeed. Thank you very much indeed. I just want a quick plug. Okay, don't go anywhere without your moon processing. I have to say, and without David, they're really well written, really easy to follow. So, as always, we like to support our speakers. So, please do. Lots of thanks coming in. Oh, I'm going to share a picture, Dave, if I can work out the technology again. This will stop the other screen. Yes, that's okay. I'm going to share this. No, I'm not. What am I going to share? The wrong thing, probably. Ah, dear, you wouldn't believe it.
Very much like Affinity Photo to me.
That's what I was looking to share. Does that come up? Can you see that?
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. So that's a picture of the Barnard Star, who shared that. Michael Jameson has shared that. So thank you, Michael. Well done.
Yeah, I can see that. Yeah, I can see the little triangle down there.
I've got 58 different screens open. I can't see anything at this precise moment. What is going on?
Yeah, if you bring your mouse down, Daz. Oh, right, to the right, to the right.
To the right, to the right, to the right.
Stop, to the right. Yeah, up slightly to the right. That one there.
That one there.
Star.
Right.
Oh, no, sorry. No, further to the right, further to the right.
Further to the right.
Further to the right. Right, up. To the left. The bright one there.
That one there. There we go.
That's Barnard Star. Yeah.
I don't know how to use Affinity. Otherwise, I'd put some sort of marker on the screen. But if you can see the mouse pointer, it is indeed that one there. Rightio. Well done.
We turned into Chuckle Vision then for a minute.
Just to show you, this is live and it's all good fun. All good fun.
Yes, I do remember that. Bernie the Bolt, please.
Let's put Dave back on screen because he knows what he's doing more than I do. Great, thanks, Dave. Now I've lost the chat, Grant. So I'm hoping you got eyes on the chat.
Yeah, I was going to just say if anyone's got any questions, pop them up in the chat. But I had a question, which is what challenge are you most looking forward to, Dave, over the summer?
Oh, well, now the Venus one is done. Well, I say it's done, but now it's coming out the other side. So I think I'll continue to get that as I go. I think the occultation of Venus and trying to get it as it comes out without going, damn, I'm in the wrong place, because that's bound to happen. That's bound to happen. Yeah, even though the mount's computer driven, I can tell it to point to Venus, but you know, in an hour, I think it's going to have drifted slightly. So especially if I'm zoomed right in to try and capture it as it comes out, I think it's going to be a challenge. But when we had the transit of Mercury last November, I got the sun right in the right position. So hopefully that's a good omen that I will get it in the right position.
What about, I had just another question for me, sorry, just being selfish. What about sort of spacecraft? Are you looking forward to any Starlink type stuff? Have you done any Starlinks sort of captures or anything so far?
Oh, don't mention that yet.
It's getting a lot of interest though, isn't it? That's the positive.
We on the Virtual Astronomy Club a few weeks ago, we had Jabi, the space station guys. He gave us a talk about capturing some of the satellites, so capturing the configuration of the ISS. And at the last launch, there was one last few days, but the one before that, it passed over just after launch, and it was dark. And he and Martin Lewis, who's going to be giving us a talk on the Virtual Astronomy Club in a few weeks' time, they managed to get this cluster of satellites in their images, and you can see the individual satellites in their images, which are absolutely fantastic.
Wow.
You know, so yeah.
Not all bad.
It's not all bad. Yeah, it is bad, but you know, yeah. But yeah.
The Noctilucent Clouds is always one for me, Dave. I actually saw them. It was a few years ago. I was in the observatory just at the right time of night and stood up, and I didn't know what they were at the time, which was really annoying. I stood up and went, "Oh, that's very interesting. I must have a bit more of a look at that." Something goes wrong on the computer, and of course you forget all about it. And I now realise what it was. Ever since then, trying to set the camera up to take an image is it's like me and meteor showers. I can guarantee if I put my camera out, they'll be all across the other side of the sky. Absolutely.
Yeah, that image I showed you of the Noctilucent Clouds, that was one evening I was out doing some imaging, and then I went upstairs to pop my card in the computer, and as I sat there, I just happened to look out the window. Oh, and it was that bright, and so I dashed out to take some images, and had to dash down the road where I could get a good northerly view. But by that time it started to fade, so I just set the camera up and just quickly grabbed what I could before it disappeared. So
yeah. I've got an idea that obviously the forecast shows it's going to be clear. Is basically just to set the camera up and just let it click away every few minutes over the course of the night and see what happens. But I say invariably. On that night, they'll all shift around to the south. I can promise you that. That's what will happen. Just something that
Ron Kelly's just sent us an image, so I've just downloaded it. So I'll open it up with the Noctilucent Clouds.
While you're doing that, there was a comment about Affinity just earlier on about it doesn't natively open FITS images. Dave, do you know, is there anything coming along in Affinity? I understand they're quite good and quite happy to take on board suggestions. Is there anything coming along for FITS images? Do you know?
No, I don't think so. I think you still need to use the plugin for that. It does open most RAW camera images, but it has this really strange develop mode that it has to go in first before you can actually open your RAW files.
Okay.
You got a couple of people interested in the occultation of Venus as well. A few people are going to get that a go, I think. So it'd be interesting to see what people come up with.
Yeah. So if I share my screen now, it's quite pixelated, Ron, but I've managed to get it open. But there's loads of structure in there. Look.
Oh well, that's quite cool.
Yeah. I'm guessing that's not your full res version. It looks like it's either been compressed by Zoom or...
Yeah, but you can see there's a lot of detail in there, which is absolutely brilliant.
Yeah. Those two big structures on either side look really interesting, don't they?
There are all these little wavy bits in here.
Yeah.
Love to see the full res one. That'd be great.
A question from Joe, Dave. What have been your most memorable solar system observations?
Oh, memorable solar system. Some of the occultations have been fantastic. Watching Saturn go behind the moon has been absolutely amazing. Yeah, I can remember one particular one was really good. I managed to capture that on slide film as well. So that was a long time ago. Yeah. And grazing occultations of stars are really good as well, because if you get a really good grazing occultation of a bright star, what it does, it sort of, as the moon goes across, because of the irregularities in the limb of the moon, it flashes on and off as little mountains hit it.
Mm-hmm.
It'll flash off as a mountain hits it, and then reappear in a valley, and then flick off again, and then just flash on and off a number of times, and they're really good to watch.
So it's a good argument for video astronomy as much as taking stills then. Yeah,
video astronomy is good, and there are people who go to the nth degree to get their PC clock synchronized to the millisecond so that they can have the time showing on the screen as they record it. And so it gets a really accurate recording of the timing of these things.
You can get these. You can get the isn't there some astronomer clock software that you can get which shows fractions of a second in?
Yeah.
I've seen some of those before, but
yeah, there is.
There's
the art is to actually get your clock synchronized correctly, and that's because they're not necessarily to the.
There's a chap on our local society who does a lot of occultation stuff, and he's got a little Raspberry Pi with a hardware GPS device, I think it is, which gives you a really, really precise time signal, and then he runs a local time server. So he is absolutely bang on, but it does require a sort of hardware solution to get that accurate.
But
you can put it together quite cheaply. That might be an interesting talk in itself.
A stream to the atomic clock or something.
Yeah, I'm always impressed with people who go to all the nitty gritty of stuff, and I just go out and give it a go. So yeah,
jolly good. Question from Mark at Beaufort. Hi Mark, I can't see you on my screen, but hope you're well down in sunny Hereford. Mark says your photo of the Venus Inferior conjunction was taken on an Evo Star 120. Did you use a Herschel wedge and a go-to mount to protect your eyesight and from destroying the camera?
I wasn't. I would say I definitely. Yes, I was using go-to. It was connected to a computer on the EQ6. But up until about a week before, I wasn't using my eyes, so it was just a case of getting the crescent on the chip first and then getting it centered on the chip. So there was the challenge. So I definitely wasn't going to get my eye anywhere near that, because obviously you get a lot of scatter of UV and infrared off all that stuff that's floating around in the atmosphere. So it's definitely not, I wouldn't recommend people view with their eyes. And what I do, I'd set the telescope up, I'd line it on the sun first without the camera in, and then I would use the computer to move it towards where Venus was and get it more or less pointed at Venus. And then I'd get on the step ladder, look down the tube and see where the sun was actually, how far the sun was getting down the tube before I put the camera in. So if it was actually past the last baffle, then I wasn't going to put the camera in.
No, indeed.
That's the way I did it.
Okay.
My eye was going anywhere near the finder or the main scope to get it centered in.
No, indeed. And obviously the usual warnings go out when you're doing that sort of work anywhere near the.
Unless you know what you're doing, don't try that. Imaging the sun without the proper filtration, etc., etc. Yeah.
No, indeed. Happy Cat says, did you use a static tripod for your Meteor shots?
My Meteor. Well, I didn't show any Meteor shots, did I?
I think he's just asking generally, do you use static tripod?
Oh, sorry, yes, it is a do, not a did. Sorry, I really must get these checked.
Just a camera tripod and a wide-angle lens, and point it sort of like.
There was a follow-up. He's saying, is there any benefit to tracking and doing longer exposures when you're trying to get meteorites rather than the static approach?
Yeah, you can get longer exposures without the trailing of the stars. So, so as long as your shutter's open and a meteor goes across, if you've got a high enough ISO, then it should record. It's whether it's bright enough and not traveling too fast, then it's obviously, it won't record if it's traveling too quickly and it's quite faint. So you need to up the ISO to make sure that it records as it goes. But if you use a tracking mount, then yes, you'll definitely have pinpoint stars rather than trails, which always look a lot better in my mind.
Martin B. Good evening, Doctor. How are we? Noctilucent Clouds. There's a webcams a couple of hours to the east, so you can check to see whether they are likely to appear. Martin, I don't know if you've got links to those that you can post upon the forum. That would be very useful, I think. Thank you. Hope you are well.
I see Michael saying solar eclipses rule. Yes, I can definitely concur with that one after now experiencing a proper one properly.
Yeah, indeed. That was Turkey, wasn't it, Dave? If I remember rightly. No, America. No, America. Yeah, of course it was. Yeah, of course it was.
2017, and the one before that was 1999, where I saw the clouds go dark. from Devon.
From Devon, yes, yeah.
Steve, Ron, and Rob have just shared some lovely pictures of their attempts at Noctilucent Clouds. So have a look at those in the chat. And Helen suggesting if we're looking for lunar occultations, then taking some videos of the dark side will also allow checking for transient lunar phenomenon, meteor strikes on the moon. That sounds like we need to get Helen to come and give us a talk about those. No pressure, Helen.
Well volunteered, Helen.
Yeah, yeah. Oh, and Michael's now bragging that he got both 1999 and 2017. So I'll go and find that ban button.
Always one.
I'll go and find the ban button. Don't worry about it.
Shall I kick him out now?
It's no good laughing about it, mate. It's no good laughing about it. I can see you.
Martin's just shared the link.
Yeah. So yeah, thanks, Martin. We'll in fact, I'll grab that now and we'll make sure that goes up on the forum. But thanks very much for that. So Martin shared the link to the webcams to check on the Noctilucent Cloud. So we'll upload that to the forum as well.
It's worth saying that if there is interest in Affinity, that we can maybe talk to Dave about having him back to maybe do a sort of a short talk on Affinity as a bit of an introduction to people. Maybe at some point that might be a good thing to do. Obviously not to the depth of your workshops, but a sort of overview might be quite a useful thing for people.
Yeah, I think that'd be very interesting. Steve Tonkin says there are some grazing of bright stars in November as well. So more bits to look out for towards the end of the year. So thanks, Steve.
Yeah.
Cool.
Excellent. Good.
Right. Well, we haven't. I think that's probably draws the questions to a close. But just want to let people know that we've got Steve Tonkin is coming to do a talk next week, same time, Sunday night next week at 7:30, and it's going to be. We thought we'd go less practical this time and sort of more sort of general. So we're going for 10 ways the universe tries to kill you. So should be very, very interested and light-hearted and very entertaining. So we look forward to seeing you next week, Steve, for that one. And we've got the following week lined up already, but if anyone's got any sort of suggestions for 3 weeks down the line, please post it up on the forum. We're trying to get a good mix of imaging, observing, cosmosy, general, so we'll try and keep that going.
Indeed. Dave, thanks very much indeed again. So everybody, you can catch up with Dave on his website, star-gazing.co.uk. Again, we'll put the links up on the forum, so you can pick it up from there, and you can find him across all the social media channels. Dave, great to see you, mate. I hope you and the wife are well. Hopefully, we'll catch up very, very soon in person.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah.
Definitely.
Stay safe, everybody.
Yeah, stay safe for the coming week. Thank you all very much.
Thank you, Dave.
See you all soon.
Cheerio, everybody.
Bye-bye.